If you want to cross some distance, you'll need to run and jump. The original tank controls remain, and are arguably more unwieldy than initially thought. Modern controls fix things by letting you fully control the camera with the right stick. However, it's quickly apparent that the camera, like in the originals, doesn't want to cooperate. It'll suddenly shoot to overhead views, not unlike the classic Resident Evil titles, and require adjusting your directions accordingly. Some jumps are more difficult because of the camera, which results in more frustration.
So the remastered of Tomb Raider kinda snuck up on me. I completely forgot that it was coming out on Valentine's Day. And I decided, well, I might take a look at it because originally I was interested in that remaster, especially because it was coming out on the Switch. And I thought, well, if I'm gonna get a physical version, I'm gonna get it there. Here's the thing with me and Tomb Raider. I used to own all 5 original games on PS1. And I don't necessarily regret parting with them. I sold them to one of my good friends. But I wasn't too hot on Tomb Raider originally. I tried to play them on PS1, didn't like them. I tried to replay them on emulator, I didn't like them. And it's not until, well, today actually, that the game came out, that I tried to play it again, starting with the Open Lara on PC. And despite the fact that it's the original version, even if it is remastered, fan remastered with all new effects like lighting, shadows, and water effects, this Tomb Raider is starting to grow on me. I'll say this and I'll say it again. I like tank controls, but I fucking hate the tank controls in Tomb Raider. I think it works in a horror game like Silent Hill or Resident Evil, where you're somewhat mobile, but you don't want to be too powerful because it would make the game, well, less scary. But also it kind of works if you want to have shifting camera angles and be more cinematic and not have that fucking awful problem that a lot of game with 2D controls have, where the camera, the Devil May Cry problem, where you go through camera angle and now your controls are inverted because you're not facing the same direction. In the case of a platformer, I don't think that having tank control works because, well, it just makes sense, doesn't it? You're supposed to be an acrobat, you're supposed to be an explorer, so why would you want to have these slow lumbering controls? You're not in a horror game, you're supposed to be fast and agile, and that's why I never really liked Tomb Raider, but I took time again for the 3rd time to play it, and it grew on me. And that brings me to my next problem. I was talking to a coworker the other day, and he's also a pretty, old fan of video games. And we touched upon the idea that, yes, we're tired of remasters, but at the same time, companies do remasters because people, demand for them, and they actually sell and work. And it got me thinking. It's something I already probably even said on this channel, but the thing is that the standards of people have gone down over the years. Each generation I'll add a little bit of nostalgia. I'm not really a nostalgic person myself, but even if every generation had some form of nostalgia, like Back to the Future had nostalgia for the 1950s. People who grew up in the 50s made movies in the 80s because they were in the late 20s and early 30s. And that's fine, but Back to the Future is a pretty cool new concept. Nowadays with the millennials, the issue is that these people have grown up, but they don't incorporate their nostalgia into their work. Their work is nothing but nostalgia. Stranger Things is an homage to Steven Spielberg movies where there's some kind of monster or supernatural force and you have kids trying to solve it. Back to the Future was an homage to the 50s, but it was framed through a time travel story. While most millennial work, when they mean an homage, they just retread the same ground in the same way. They don't invent new things, And some people will say there's nothing new under the sun, but there's a way to take something old and make something new with it. But millennials don't do that. Millennials keep just living in their nostalgia because they're a generation of people that were really infantilized and never really grew up. As much as we complain on this channel about feminism and whatnot, there is truth to the term men-children. At first I didn't even like indie games because most of them were homages to Mario 3. And now they're all homages to Metroid or Castlevania, and it's getting fucking boring. I want new things. I still think that it's worthwhile to remake old games, because games especially like Tomb Raider, well, when was the last time that it was remade? On 360, PS3, 7th gen with Anniversary? You can buy it on PC, I guess, but can you really enjoy the originals outside of an emulation? And the thing is that you want it to be available easily to the masses, because when you make a product, you don't want people to jump through hoops to enjoy the product or expect it not to sell. And I think that it's also important for game conservation to have easily legal available ways of accessing the content. So we're playing the remastered. I was actually really pleased, but there's one issue that keeps cropping up. My fucking god, do people have completely lost the ability to understand and adapt things. Not only do we have a generation of infantilized people that can't move on, but now games have been so dumbed down and homogenized that as soon as you try to reintroduce any form of critical thinking and challenge, people crumble. From what I've seen, the reception of the Tomb Raider Remastered has been pretty positive, but there's always going to be outlets talking about how the tank controls are bad, how this, how that, how this is antiquated. And let's not forget about that trigger warning at the beginning about how this game is misogynistic and racist and antiquated. And here's the thing, I tried the modern controls for Tomb Raider and they don't really work that well. They work for moving around, but when it comes to platforming and combat, not as well. It's the same issue that Resident Evil Remake had when it was brought to 7 and 8 gen and PC. It's that the game wasn't built around that, so it doesn't work perfectly. People have just lost that ability to adapt. And you know, as much as we can complain about, you know, things like Sweet Baby Inc., or how modern games are terrible with their remakes, anti-consumer tactics, monetization, people buy these games. There's a generation of people that do not know any better, and I've tried to talk to some of these people. I've mentioned it on my stream and this channel, and then I get greeted with, nah, it's just because you were a kid, it's nostalgia. But those same people will just think, well, there's no problem, or there is a problem, but when you propose to them something different, they don't want anything. They don't want to try old things. If it's not immediately accessible, well, people give up. And that's why I always find the idea of, you know, people in whatever community, whether it's extreme sports like skateboard or video games, trying to bring in new people, you have to understand that it's kind of human nature and just the nature of living creatures to just, you know, struggle when it comes to adapting. That's just how life is. You're programmed to do the least effort possible, but when you go through the effort, you realize that, oh shit, well, it was worth going through the hassle. That's why, you know, a lot of people are fat nowadays and don't exercise. That's why there's not more professional boxers. That's why not everyone is a world champion, because it's fucking hard and it demands effort and you need to adapt. And people, especially nowadays, especially with the millennials and the Gen Z, have lost that ability or never cultivated it in the first place. Now, when it comes to that awful virtue signaling at the beginning of the collection, well, here's the thing. the game is actually produced by Embracer Group, and the developers are Aspire. Don't quote me on this, but I've done some quick research, and it seems that Aspire are people that are fans, that have consulted fans to make sure that they've had the best product possible. Honestly, if it wasn't for that little warning at the beginning, I would have never figured out that, this was something that came out recently, because, it would have been easy to have, because you can press the start button like Halo to have, to revert to the old graphics. It would have been easy to have Laura with the old graphics, press one button, and have her model changed to look like new Laura, tanned, ethnically ambiguous Laura. But they didn't. They just kept that modernized look that Laura has in all those spin-off games that Crystal Dynamics has pushed to the side, because they fucking hate the fact that we prefer old Laura, and that remaster is probably going to sell and be received better than the new games. People talked about Tomb Raider 215 because it was the new thing and my graphics, but do people talk about it now? Then the second one came out. I like the second one because it was almost done with being cinematic and everything, and all those modern tropes that I hate, like the fact that you can't run and only dodge and dumb things like that. But then the third game came out, and Lyra has she has a male figure now. She doesn't look feminine anymore, and nobody cared about the game. Despite all the advertising that there was for that product, nobody fucking cared, and rightfully so. So now you have a game made by fans. Fans were consulted, and the Embracer Group is behind it. May I remind you that when Saints Row came out, the last Saints Row, the Embracer Group went, no, don't do your woke shit. And Volition went, no, we're going to do woke shit. And Embracer Group went, okay, you're closed now. So actually, for once, like I said, I've changed my stance on buying games from companies I don't like. Here's the thing. I bought the game. I want companies to see that, no, there is place for remasters of old games. I don't want necessarily remakes. I want remasters of the games that are hard to find, and I want new games with new ideas. I want to preserve games. I want game conservation, but I want to move forward. I don't think they should have remade Resident Evil 4. Resident Evil 4 did not need a remake. Resident Evil 2, there wasn't an argument for that. Resident Evil 3 also, but you botched it. After Resident Evil 3, I think they should have just made a new Resident Evil, or just made a new game altogether. As much as I can make fun of From Software doesn't just make Dark Souls 1, 2, 3. They went, well, actually, let's make Elden Ring. Let's have a different design philosophy, even if the games are similar. Okay, we've done Souls-like for a while now. So now let's make a new Armored Core, because there hasn't been one since the 7th gen. And maybe, just maybe, we might get a new Tenchu or something. That's what I want with my games, And as much as, we can say that Kojima is probably doomed, I like the fact that he fucking made Death Stranding, and that there's a Death Stranding 2. I just don't like the people he associates with. But Death Stranding 1 was actually surprisingly fun, and it's a weird kind of game that you've never really had before. And I wish people would copy that more, or, something like Breath of the Wild, than just doing a lot of fucking Metroidvania-likes, or roguelikes, or fucking card game roguelikes. I'm so fucking tired of that shit. Can we fucking stop, please? Well, anyways, that's all I've got. Honestly, do buy that game. I've played it, and so far it ain't bad.